Mark.
And I'm Josh.
And this is a special edition of Alter Ego Comics TV, and we pick our top 5 must-read Spider-Man graphic novels. This is a big year for Spider-Man. He's celebrating his 50th anniversary. There's a brand new movie out, and we thought that we'd give you our picks for our favorite top 5 Spider-Man graphic novels. Kicking things off with Spider-Man Blue by the team of writer Jeph Loeb and artist Tim Sale. You may remember this team from Batman: The Long Halloween and Dark Victory. Loeb and Sale also did a series of color-themed books at Marvel: Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Gray, Daredevil Yellow, and all of the Marvel books have kind of they're love stories, essentially, with your favorite Marvel characters. And in this case, it's a love story involving Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker, but it's set in nearly the present day. So, spoiler alert, huge spoiler alert, if you have never read comics before and you're going to go see the Amazing Spider-Man movie, or you've seen it already, Gwen Stacy's dead. So she died many, many years ago. It was a huge thing in comics. So this is kind of like a love letter to Gwen Stacy from Peter Parker many, many years down the road, when he's married to Mary Jane, and he's just kind of remembering Gwen because he doesn't want to forget her, and she was such a big part of his life.
Spider-Man and Mary Jane were never married.
Shut up. They are in my world. Anyway, so the great thing about this book is, there's one underlying theme of Peter's actually dictating this love letter to Gwen on a cassette recorder. I don't know what that is, but in the meantime, we're seeing a lot of his adventures from the past. We see a confrontation with the Green Goblin. We see a confrontation with the Rhino, 2 different Vultures, and some of his other villains. I don't want to give away too much here. But each one, it just has a great feel to it, and the artwork by Tim Sale is outstanding. We don't see a lot from Tim Sale these days. He was supposed to be doing a project with Loeb, Captain America White, which we got a preview issue of, and that was it many, many years ago. But to see Sale draw the Marvel characters, which he's primarily known for drawing Batman, is really outstanding, and there's some great splash pages in here. Another great thing about this is it's very accessible to female readers. A lot of times we'll get spouses or girlfriends or just women coming in looking to read a superhero book, and we can easily point them to the Loeb Sale stuff because they're written in a very, I guess, gender neutral perspective, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But we've had a lot of our female readers enjoy the Loeb Sale collaborations, and Spider-Man Blue is no exception. It's one of my favorites. It's one that can be read over and over again. And again, the underlying theme with this is kind of a love story, which makes it different from a lot of the comics that are out there today.
Number 2, or next up on our top 5 Spider-Man trades, kind of a new one, SpiderMan Big Time. This is by the creative team of Dan Slott and Humerto Ramos. And Slott kind of did some of the partial writing tours with Once Brand New Day when everything got rebooted and the marriage disappeared to MJ. But this is the first time he's taken over as main writer, how from there on it was just him helming the book and telling the stories he wanted to tell. And it's super awesome. Peter Parker's kind of one of his defining characteristics over the years has been the Parker luck. He tries to help people and it goes badly for him. No matter what good he does, J. Jonah Jameson is still harping at him in the news. He tries to save his girlfriend and accidentally snaps her neck. Life is very difficult for Peter Parker. But this volume, we see kind of a shift in tone to Peter Parker Big Time. He gets a real job, which makes so much sense. Peter Parker's spent his entire life, as a teenager, he designs web shooters and web tracers and things that are technologically advanced. But then he works these little jobs as a photographer. He doesn't take advantage of this obvious genius he possesses. And Big Time he does. We see him get a job at a think tank called Horizon Labs. He's teamed up with a bunch of really interesting, eccentric people. He has a paycheck. Peter Parker can get an apartment. Peter Parker doesn't have to worry about paying the bills. And so by taking away some of the things that have constantly plagued him, we get to see a whole new side of Peter, see new challenges, see how he reacts in a new set of circumstances. The Dan Slott run of Spider-Man is someday going to be looked back on as one of the classic runs. And this is where it starts. It sets everything up so nicely, and it's really just, it's a whole shift in the way Peter Parker's life goes and the way Spider-Man feels, and I just love the heck out of it.
Next up is The Amazing Spider-Man Kraven's Last Hunt. Now, this was published in the 1980s, written by J.M. DeMatteis and illustrated by Mike Zeck, and these guys were at the top of their game when they did this story, and it is quite possibly the darkest Spider-Man story to ever be published. it involves Kraven the Hunter, and it is his last hunt. He is just down in the dumps and depressed and is completely miserable with his life, so much so that he basically is going to kill himself. But he has to take Spider-Man down with him. So he does some pretty horrible things. He ends up kidnapping Peter and burying him in the ground, and I don't want to give too much away here again, but he dresses up as Spider-Man and kind of terrorizes Mary Jane. He dresses up in the black costume and terrorizes Mary Jane. And there's another character called Vermin who's here, who's kind of a half man, half rat that lives in the sewers. It's dark, 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 but it is so good. It's a complete 180 from Spider-Man Blue as far as look and feel and content. So if you're looking for more of a harder edge Spider-Man storyline, and again, one that had a big impact on the character for many, many years, this is the one to go with, especially if you're a fan of Kraven the Hunter.
Next up, we've got Amazing Spider-Man, Spider Island. This was one of the first really big kind of event-type books that Slott wrote in his Spider-Man run. This is Dan Slott and Humerto Ramos again, and also collects some issues of the Venom series that tied into it by Rick Remender and whoever was drawing Venom then.
Tony Moore?
Stefano? Caselli, maybe? I don't know.
Anyway.
So basically, the city of New York has been overrun by bedbugs, which seems like an awesome thing for Spider-Man to fight. But it turns out that the bites of these bedbugs begin infecting people, and they sort of freak out and become giant spiders. So as the infection rate rises, New York literally becomes Spider Island. They wall it off, kind of like no man's land. There's an order restricting everyone to the city. Everyone's blaming, well, not everyone, but some people are blaming Spider-Man because Spider thing, we could just assume Spider-Man's somehow responsible, especially when J. Jonah Jameson's acting as mayor of New York and is in control of the whole crisis. And it's just so much fun. You're just crossing over with the Avengers, the Fantastic Four. You actually see some logic spin out of his time at Horizon Labs, and some Horizon Labs gets kind of put on the case to try and solve the problem. And it also ties back into Spider-Man stories and mythos that go back decades. You know, you've got things tying into the Clone Saga. I don't want to spoil it, but the Jackal is involved, and everyone loves the Jackal. He's responsible for making clones of Peter Parker and basically mucking up his life for the last 30-some years. You've also got the new Venom, Flash Thompson, as Venom showing up and being tied in with Captain America and some very cool stuff. You've got people you know and love turning into giant spiders, and Peter Parker actually being in a position to be the expert. If you have a spider problem, Peter's the expert, and he gets the job done, and Spider Island was super awesome.
It is an epic story. We talk about big event stories at Marvel and DC. Every summer they do some big event. This was huge. It wasn't billed as a big event, but was so much fun and just awesome. Lots of different characters, great stuff. Finally, a little bit of a curveball, Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1. This is written by Brian Michael Bendis with artwork by Mark Bagley, and this came out in the year 2000 when Marvel decided that they were going to launch the Ultimate Universe, which was kind of like it's a different universe than what we're familiar with, where they can make the heroes younger and make their origins a little more contemporary. In this case, Peter Parker is a high school student in the year 2000. Instead of being a photographer for the Daily Bugle, he's the webmaster or the web designer for the Daily Bugle. Aunt May is a little more hip than she was in the 60s.
Uncle Ben has a ponytail.
Yes. Aunt May does yoga and doesn't make wheat cakes. But this is perfect for the young adult that's looking to get into Spider-Man, or the lapsed comic book fan who wants to read a little more modern take on Spider-Man, or the longtime Spider-Man fan that's looking for a different interpretation. This ran for a very, very long time. Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, which is a little bit of a different title, is still running and involves the new character, a new character named Miles Morales as Spider-Man. But there are something like 22, 24 different volumes of Ultimate Spider-Man, and to see the modern interpretation of classic villains, of classic characters, and the entire thing was written by Brian Michael Bendis. So you have one writer, one vision from beginning to end on this, which is outstanding. So this is something that we highly recommend to, again, your young adult, your teenage reader, and somebody, if you go to see the Spider-Man movie and you're looking for a place to start, Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1 is the place for you. So that's it. That's our top 5 Spider-Man graphic novel recommendations. what are your recommendations? What are some of your favorite Spider-Man storylines? Feel free to leave those in the comments below. And as always, we appreciate you watching the Alter Ego Comics videos. We'll see you next time.